Okay, well, welcome everybody. This is a new experience for us. Your first time we're doing a Google Plus conference, and I'm so pleased that we're able to reach out to so many different installations and all the way over to Afghanistan. I appreciate everyone participating. What we wanted to do today is have the opportunity to answer some of your questions. There's a lot going on in the Army every single day as we have soldiers all around the world serving, and also all the work our great families do. And we appreciate everything that our families do. My wife Linda is here. A little background on us: we've been married for about 38 years, and we were married when I first came into the Army, so we've had the whole Army experience together, and my wife has been along my side the whole time and involved in many different installations and other projects that we've done. But she is a volunteer and a spouse and is here to support her soldier today, me, and so we look forward very much to this. So I'll just turn it over really quickly.
Hello everyone. We look forward to spending time with you today, and just so proud of your service to our country and our nation and our soldiers and families. Very grateful.
So with that, why don't we open it up?
So Afghanistan, you guys can go ahead and get us started.
Hey, sir, this is Major Troy Fisher coming to you from RC South in Afghanistan. Thanks for the opportunity to do this today, sir. Before I ask my first question, if it's possible, I'd like to introduce the phenomenal team of soldiers that's sitting here with me today. To my left, I've got Staff Sergeant Barnwell. He's with 4th Brigade, 4th ID, a unit that I see on your right shoulder is very near and dear to your heart. We've got Specialist Ip here from 16th Combat Aviation Brigade. We've got Specialist Otto and Specialist Kopp, both from 1st Cavalry Division. They're in our J2, have joined you. And then PFC Williams, who's here from 3rd ACR. So we've got a representation of across the Army: Fort Hood, Fort Carson, Joint Base Lewis McChord. So with that, sir, I'd like to ask a question about family support. Having been in the Army for a couple of years now, I've seen iterations from pre-OEF, OIF, family readiness groups. We've added on family readiness support assistance, FRSAs to the mix. I'm just curious in your thoughts as to what family support looks like in the future. How is it going to change? Is it going to go back to what we may have seen 10 or 15 years ago, or is there something new that we're going to do? Over.
Well, I think we're in the process of really not starting a new program, but moving forward with our current program. And over the last 8 to 10 years, we've been given additional funds because of operational funds to significantly increase the volume of family support. But as the Army comes down and the budget gets a little squeezed, we have to review this. But we're not eliminating support to Army families. What we're trying to do is understand and pick the programs that are the most successful. And so we will continue to do that to support families. The thing that's different, the reason we can't probably go back to where we were prior to the war is we're going to have to maintain programs that support our soldiers and families because of what they've been through 13 years of war. Right? We got to make sure that those programs remain in place. We've also learned a lot about resiliency and the fact that how you build resiliency in families and soldiers, and we want to focus a lot of our programs on building resiliency. So I think that'll be some of the difference you see if we're really starting to focus more on building resiliency, but still having the counseling and other programs available for soldiers and families, and other programs like child support. And we will still sustain the FRSA program. It won't be all the way down to battalion level like it was. We will have an FRSA for every unit that deploys, but not every battalion will have one. We will regulate those on the installation, but we will still continue to have that kind of support.
And we still encourage you being very active in your family readiness groups and getting together, and that's a great way to build camaraderie within the unit. So we really do encourage.
The last thing I would add is, as it comes to family readiness groups, we still think the personal contact is really important as we continue to reach out to our soldiers and families. Yes, we have to understand that today we have to take advantage of the virtual capability like we are today, because it allows us to extend our reach. So we want to be able to do both. And I think that'll be an important part of our program as we go forward, that we have a virtual and a hands-on program for our family readiness groups.
Okay, Fort Campbell.
Army Strong, sir. My name is Captain Works. I'm the company commander here at 3rd Brigade Combat Team 101st Rocky Sons, along with the other soldiers and officers here. I have my wife, Julie, and our youngest son, Justice. Sir, my question goes right along with the last question and answer concerning comprehensive soldier and family fitness, specifically programs related to that. The topic being strong bonds as well as master resiliency. Is there a possibility of having a program that might go along with the Strong Bonds program format or POI, and marrying it along with a program such as Master Resiliency Training, or to have a medical healthcare professional who specializes in the family and military life counseling in order to provide that soldier and spouse a non-threatening therapeutic and educational setting in which they can identify those stressors that they have in their lives, that come along with military life, and just give them the proper tools to apply that to specific situations.
Well, thanks for your question. Actually, it's a great point. You know, we have learned a lot out of Strong Bonds. Strong Bonds has been a really successful program in allowing couples to choose to go and participate in off-sites and other activities that allows them to move forward as a couple, especially under the strain of deployments and other things. We're doing a few things in the medical community in terms of initiatives, in terms of the health piece, which is a combination of nutrition and sleep and exercise and other things like that, and then we call it the performance triad. So we're doing that at every single installation. And General Colorado could probably talk a little bit more about that once I'm done here. But I think your thought process is a good one, and we'll take a look at maybe a program that we can set up like Strong Bonds. We can do it through counselors and other medical capabilities that might be able to do something that could bring families and family members and individual soldiers, give them the opportunity to participate. So I had not thought about that, but I think it's something that we certainly can look at.
And also for our single soldiers, Strong Bonds is very helpful as far as relationships with your families. It helps soldiers. Don't forget the single soldiers need that extra support to learn how to create a family.
But I'll pass that off to General Colorado if he has anything else he wants to add.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I think to meet the chief's intent, I think we're moving forward with regards to thinking about the whole soldier and her family or his family for the life of his time in the Army and for a life afterwards. When you think about the whole person, you think not only about the physical, but you add to that emotional, mental, marital, spiritual, and all those aspects together I think are going to provide a stronger, more resilient soldier who is a lady or a gentleman when we need them to be, and they can engage the enemy when we need them to be. To answer your specific question with regards to Strong Bonds and the strength of the family, that most of that is in the chaplain's arena, but what the medical part is involved with, as the chief talked about, is a performance triad where we're trying to make someone as strong as possible to promote wellness, to prevent disease through nutrition, sleep, activity, family relationships, spiritual strength, etc. And we have on our website the specifics on the performance triad and some other aspects that speaks to one of our Surgeon General's 4 main priorities, and that is the health of the soldier, families, and retirees. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, so what we can do is I'm going to take a look at, can we have something at installations that might allow families to better understand this? So I think we'll take that on. So thank you very much for your question.
Fort Riley, go ahead.
Good morning, sir, ma'am, and duty first for the Dear Fort Riley. I'm First Sergeant Dean. I'm Charlie Battery's 1st Sergeant 17th Field Artillery. Sir, my question today, we've come down from about 570,000 troops, and through a variety of force shaping methods, we expect to be at 490,000 by the end of the year. Sir, my question would be, with all the hot spots in the world today, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Ukraine, is it responsible to continue the drawdown, and will we be able to fight these fronts simultaneously?
Yeah, it's a great, thanks for that question. That's a terrific question. And, you know, right now we're at about 510,000, and then by the end of next year, the end of September of 15, we'll be at 490,000. I was interviewed this week, actually, and I mentioned that I believe it's time for us to have a security debate because of what I call the increased velocity of instability around the world, and the fact that I believe that our requirements are going up, not down. So I think it's important to have a conversation about this. I think Congress has to have a debate. We need to be involved with it, and we need to further discuss whether future reductions in end strength and sequestration are the right things, not only for the Army, but for the other services as well, as we continue to be involved. So I think over the next 6 or 8 months, we have to have this discussion. I think we'll continue to look at the facts and the requirements that we continue to get, not only as an Army, but a joint force, and we will take a good look at this. And you know, again, it has to be in concert with Congress as well, and so we'll work with them and try to have a good discussion so they understand what I worry about is the potential future strains on our soldiers, because if we make a mistake in end strength, it falls on the backs and shoulders of our soldiers who we're going to ask to continue to do a variety of missions, and that's very important to me that we do all we can to take the pressure off of them, and so we have enough capacity to deal with these problems. So I'm hoping that we're going to have a good, strong discussion probably after the election on the first week in November, and that will then allow us to have a good discussion. Great question. Thanks for that question.
All right, Fort Hood.
Good morning, sir, ma'am. I'm Sergeant Wellman, 504th BFSB Corps. Thank you so much for this opportunity to let the soldiers talk to you and answer questions. My question to you today is, with the proposed 2015 budget, it's attempting to reduce benefits and spend the savings on readiness with things like reducing the housing allowance, a 1% military pay increase, cutting subsidies to the commissaries, and potentially more medical fees. What further cuts can soldiers and family members expect with quality of life initiatives?
Great question. So let me first take that first part that you took. So I don't want to get into a lot of details with you, but it's important that you understand. So right now, personnel costs are about 46% of the total budget that the Army gets. And it's slated to increase over time. If we keep going the way we are in about 10 or 12 years, it'll be in the 60s. And so the problem with that is we can't fund training, and we can't fund modernization to get the best equipment that we need in order to ensure that our soldiers are ready when we ask them to deploy and do operational requirements and meet our operational commitments. So what we're trying to do is, for short periods of time, reduce the rate of growth. And so, for example, instead of a 2% raise, we do a 1% raise. And if you compound that over years, it saves like billions of dollars. I know that's hard to believe, but just that small decrease saves billions of dollars. We have to look at our healthcare costs. They're going up, and so what we have to be able to do, though, is do it right. And so we're still working that. We don't have those have not been approved yet, by the way. And my guess is it'll probably be next year until that changes. But what we have to do is ensure that TRICARE is such that we can reduce the costs, that the admin costs and overhead costs of TRICARE while still giving them the same care to our soldiers and families. And so we want to, we really, for active duty, absolutely, I'm trying to ensure we have a program that does not increase costs, out-of-pocket costs. And I think there's ways for us to do that. We're taking a look at it. We're working with the Defense Health Agency, who's actually the overseeing portion to do this. In terms of commissaries, what we're trying to do is make the commissary self-sufficient. And there's ways for to do that where we still gain the benefits of the commissary, but frankly just run it better than it's being run now. So, by the way, we are not eliminating commissaries. I think they'll still create the savings that you're used to, but we have to manage it differently. And so that's really what we're trying to do. It's very important for us that we sustain the benefits that are proportional to the sacrifice that our soldiers and families make. And please be rest assured that I never forget that, and the leadership up here never forgets that. And as we work our way through that, we're trying to balance to make sure that the soldiers and their families are getting what they need, as well as how it fits in to the rest of the Army. So there's a commission that's looking at this. They'll look at retirement and a few other benefits. But we are going to ensure that we give them the input that ensures that they understand the commitment is very different than what our soldiers make, and that we have to make sure that we continue to reward that. And so right now, the only thing that has a possibility of being improved is a 1% pay raise instead of 1.8%. And I think that would be okay. Personally, I think that's okay for the next couple of years. We'll continue to work healthcare. We're going to continue to work the commissary, and we're going to watch retirement. We think that's an important benefit, and we want to make sure that that sustains itself as an important benefit as we go forward. So this is not done yet. We're still taking a hard look at it. We want to do what's best for the Army overall in terms of training and readiness, but also taking care of our families and our soldiers. And we're going to really look at that in that way. So really, really a terrific question. I know it's one that's on the mind of everybody. I know I didn't give you any solid answers. That's because we don't have any yet. And we're still taking a very hard look at it. So thanks for that.
All right.
Thanks, sir.
Afghanistan, we'll go back to you.
Good evening, sir. Staff Sergeant Warren from Task Force Red Warrior. I'm currently the Battalion Sharp Victim Advocate at my unit. And the other day I was reading on the CAPES website, pretty much a rundown of your symposium that you conducted at West Point back in July of professionalism. My question today, sir, is whether or not a professionalism training will be implemented at the lower level, sort of WLC or ALC type training, in order to really push on the fact of what professionalism is. In my experience as the victim advocate, I deal with a lot of cases that could easily been solved if the soldier understood what professionalism means and what it means for the Army. And I honestly think that if we make a bigger investment in the lower leadership, it'll pay off in the long run with closing the gap between personal values and the Army ethics, which is in the shortcoming years is where we're really trying to go. So is there a plan, sir? And if there is, what is it?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for being a victim advocate, actually. I want to thank you for that. That's a really important job. So thank you for taking that on. There's two key elements of our profession of arms program as we go forward. And first off, the one thing I tell everyone is you got to realize is that we get soldiers from many different backgrounds. We get soldiers from different religious backgrounds, different financial backgrounds, different geographical backgrounds, and they all come from a different set of values. And so the first thing we have to do is when somebody comes into the Army, they have to get inculcated in what the values are in our culture and what we expect of our young men and women and the behavior that they have. Because you're exactly right. I believe that if we have soldiers who understand what's expected, what that behavior is, it will eliminate a lot of our problems, such as sexual harassment, sexual assault, and other in other areas. We're going to have, from now on, we're going to have men and women serving in our Army for a very long time. So it's important to do this. So there's two pillars that we have. One is what we call the institutional pillar, which is incorporating this training of the profession, of the ethic, of moral and ethical values that the Army expects, and that will be done at every institutional school. Ones that, basic training, all the way up to training I do for general officers. And it will include all of this in there. And so we're already in the process of implementing that now and changing the curriculums there. The second piece, though, is the training that happens at the operational level. And it's at the unit. And what that means is at the unit. And we still have a lot of work to do there. Because in my mind, what could happen is you could have great training in the institution, but if you go to your unit and they're not implementing and they're not following the standards of what we consider to be the profession, then it falls apart. So what we're trying to do now is develop capabilities that platoon leaders, platoon sergeants, company commanders, battalion commanders, first sergeants, sergeant majors can use for tools to just have discussions and to lead our young men and women through the discussion of what the profession is and why it's so important. I tell everyone that we're given an incredible responsibility because of the missions that we're given, and we represent the United States. And it is an honor to serve, but it's important for us to understand that we are able then to represent ourselves, represent who we are, and also that we can prove to everyone else that we're an organization that they want to be like because of the moral and ethical values and the professional ethic that we espouse. So it's those two pillars. The institutional pillar, we're able to change more quickly. The operational one, we are working now to get the training materials. And the Combined Arms Center at Fort Leavenworth are responsible for this, and they're working now with the center we have up at West Point that deals with ethics. And so we're putting that together now, and I think in the next year, you're going to start to see these materials start to go out through the Army.
All right, Fort Campbell.
Good morning, sir. Warrant Officer 1 Charles Payne. My question has to do with divorce and child custody in the military. I've only been here for 12 years, but too often I've seen that through divorce, the military member loses the chance to have primary custody only because they're in the military. And I didn't know if there was anything that could be done about that to help them have a better chance. Maybe JAG officers educate themselves more with civilian divorce courts and help alleviate that stigma that just because we're in the military, we shouldn't have the right to have primary custody. I don't know if there's anything you can do about that, but I thought I'd bring it to your attention.
Yeah, thank you. A great question. We do, so what we have to do is we have liaisons now with civilian courts. But the problem is we can't have a liaison. We usually have those liaisons with courts that are right around our military installations. And a lot of these child custody fights, they're all around the country. And so what we have to be able to do is reach out to them and at least be able to explain what a soldier does, why they can have custody, etc. And so we'll take a look at that. I'll get with the Judge Advocate General and ask her what we can do, because I do, it's important. And as difficult as divorce is and what that means to a family, we always want our soldiers, obviously, to stay involved with their families. So it's important for us. Dave Halverson, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
Hey, sir, that is a great question. And it's been discussed somewhat at our AFAP, but I think that's a great forum we can bring in because we've had some success in our AFAP, our forums where we've actually changed some statutory and some things. So I really think that'd be a good one that we could look at as we bring that into the AFAP, sir, because like you said, we have a lot more capability now for single parents in the Army programs that we didn't have before the past. The demographic has changed. You know that with 24/7 daycare like we have at Fort Jackson because of some of the drill sergeants and all those types of things. So I think it is something that we have also built some capability from a soldier's perspective to assist this demographic that is growing within our Army.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for the great question. Appreciate it.
All right, go ahead, Fort Riley.
Staff Sergeant Reed, 1st Brigade, 1st ID, duty first. Earlier this week, the Army announced that women would now be eligible to attend Ranger School. What changes do you expect will be made to the course, or can we expect it to stay the same? And what other initiatives will be now open to women?
So I want to clarify. So what we're doing, thanks for the question, by the way, great question. We are doing a pilot for Ranger School, and we're going out and asking right now what women would like to do it. We're also looking for cadre, and what we mean is really observers, because you have to be properly trained in order to be Ranger cadre, but we want to have female observers who would observe this, and we're planning on doing the first pilot in March, and we'll make a final decision on that in January as we go forward. So I think, I'm pretty sure we'll be able to go forward with it in March. And then depending on how that goes, we'll make a decision, do we incorporate it permanently and allow females to continue to go to Ranger School. I believe it's an incredible leadership institution. I think we should open it up to everybody, but it's important for us to take a look at it. In terms of standards, we are not going to change any standards. They will be the same standards that we've had for Ranger School forever. The physical standards will be the same. The qualification standards, the standards that we grade individuals on will not change. Now, what we are going to do, which we do no matter who goes to Ranger School, we are going to, for this March class, we're going to take everybody, men and women. We're going to bring them to Fort Benning. They will go through a pre-Ranger training period, and that's what we do really for everybody, and then they will begin our Ranger School. So what we want to do is make sure we have the right oversight of it. I'm very confident that we'll be able to do this, but the standards are going to be the same, because it is as I go around and talk to everybody about this, both male and female, the majority, clear majority, is we don't want the standards lower. We want it to be the same. We will meet the standards no matter who it is, and I think that's very important, because Ranger School is something that has been a leadership school that's very important to our Army, and we want to make sure we maintain it that way. So initially we'll start out with not changing the standards, and I don't expect that will change. But it's a very important question. I believe that we're going to open up more and more positions to women. We're heading down that road now. We're in the middle of a 2-year program to assess standards and look at how we would integrate women into all MOSs in the Army. We're well along in that. At the end of next year, we will make a recommendation. The decision has been made to open up all MOSs by the Secretary of Defense. We would have to come back and ask for an exception. So we're doing a 2-year evaluation to see if we should have to ask for an exception. But right now, I believe we're going to open up as many MOSs as possible for women. I think we're well on the way to doing that. So thank you for your question. Great question.
All right, go ahead, Fort Hood.
Good morning, sir, ma'am. Sergeant Rodriguez, Alpha Company, CRDMC. Once again, thank you for this opportunity. My question is, the proposed 1% military pay increase will continue to place challenges on military families. However, the child care costs that Army go through continue to rise. What can be done to ensure that CYSS costs don't become disproportionate?
Okay, I'm going to ask Dave Halverson to begin that, and then I'll follow up with Dave. So, Dave.
Hey, sir, that's a good question, and we participate with OSD on the range of the cost, because a lot of our CYSS things are through the appropriated categories that we do have. So what we've worked with OSD to make sure there is a good range of motion. The good news about the Army programs, as we've worked this, we are at the lowest end of the spectrum for the cost of all the services and stuff. So we've tried to keep it as manageable as possible. And so therefore, if it is an issue for service members because of the rising costs or what they have to be able to do, then then they can ask for an exception if there is exceptions. And that's really what we want to push, is leadership involved, know their soldiers, and then work the exceptions if needed. But we are very cognizant of the limited buying power that our soldiers may have, and what the costs of running these these services are. And that exception is really a hardship, a waiver that they have to ask for if they're having challenges managing their fiscal or their budget, sir.
If I could just add, so just so you know, we work very hard. It's a DoD program, but the Army has lowered costs and tried to keep them lower than any of the other services for child care because of what I believe to be the unique challenges that we have, especially with the number of deployments. Now, with deployments going down, although we're still deploying a lot of soldiers, some of the money that was there to help fray the cost of child care is going away. But we're still going to try to keep the lowest rates possible in all of our CDCs. And we understand that the stress that brings on a family, especially since we have more married couples. We have more Army married couples. We also have more of our young soldiers who are married, that means they require some child care. We understand that. The costs of child care, though, are going up. So what we're trying to do is keep it at the same rate as it increases. Now, in terms of child youth services, we are trying to increase our programs at our CYSs and programs that allow children to go after school to our CYSs and have additional programs there that help them to take care. We think that's an important program, and that's one that we'll continue to look at as we go forward. We monitor this very carefully, and so we understand your concern. There are some who have tried to eliminate CDCs in the military, in Congress. They want us to go to a civilian system. We fight that very hard for two reasons. One, our CDCs are better than the CDCs in the civilian community. And secondly, we can do it at a lower cost. And so we fight very hard with them to make sure that we maintain this benefit. So you probably will continue to see some increase, but we're doing the best we can to keep it down as low as possible, the cost of childcare, because we understand the importance. And we understand the importance of you having confidence in the child care that mothers and fathers use. It's very important, especially when we ask you to do many difficult things in terms of deployments.
All right, Afghanistan, we'll go back to you.
Hi, sir. Specialist Aaron Ip with Task Force Raptor, Kandahar Airfield. My question is in reference to the United States committing troops to fight the Ebola virus in Africa, and what types of forces will be used, and how will this affect the Army aviation community?
Well, it's first, great question. So it's unclear yet. We're still doing mission analysis. Frankly, we just got a team on the ground over there who is doing an assessment of what is needed. It is a very bad situation. I was briefed the other day that they believe that within 60 days, if something is not done, there'll be up to 1 million people infected and 500,000 deaths. And so it is an emergency. It's a medical emergency of the proportions we haven't seen since the plague centuries ago, frankly. And so we're still doing mission analysis. Initially, the request was not having any aviation involved, but frankly, the initial reports I'm getting back on infrastructure and road structures, I believe we're probably going to have to, at some time, send aviation over there, medevac, and probably some transportation aircraft over there. But that decision has not been made yet. I think the majority initially of the people going over will be logistics personnel that will be separated from where the disease is in order to assist in providing support. We're also will build some centers, engineers to build some centers in order to get closer to the population so they can treat the population. We'll probably deploy some hospitals in terms of the equipping initially, and then later on we'll see if we actually send hospital personnel. None of these decisions have been made yet, but it's a very difficult decision. Working very closely with non-governmental organizations that are over there, but it is dire. And when things get dire and the problems get difficult, they turn to the military for a solution, and this is no different. So I think you'll see this play out over the next week or so, and we'll solidify what the requirements are. But I think you'll see requirements for the medical community, engineers, logistics, potentially aviation, and we'll develop those as we go forward. Thank you for your question.
Go ahead, Fort Campbell.
Good morning, sir. Master Sergeant Richardson, 175 Cav. I'm joined with my wife, Shannon. Been married, I think, for 26 years. My question, sir, concerns quality of life issues for soldiers and also married soldiers and single soldiers. Are we looking at the cost benefits of the privatized housing versus going back to when we first came in, where the military ran the housing? And that goes for the same for the soldiers in the barracks, where we're going back to the First Army Patrol in the barracks. Well,
yeah. So with privatized housing, I would tell you there's a couple things. Is first, in a lot of ways, that's better for the Army budget-wise, because in the past, what we had to do was we had to allocate money separate that was allocated in order to build housing and to sustain it. And it was a pretty large cost, and frankly, we were doing a terrible job at it. We weren't maintaining it very well, and that new housing we were building was limited by congressional restrictions, so the houses were very small. So about 10 years ago, we started entering into, as you said, the private initiative. What's good about that is what happens is they now take your BH, which we never. So if you live on post, you get your housing allowance, and you get the cost of living that's there, and that goes to the people who are renting the houses. That was money we never saw anyhow. It was just into the Treasury. So for us, it's enabling us to use that money, and then we think, and I'd like to hear your opinion on it. We think that it's providing better housing, better sustained housing. So we locked into 50-year contracts when we did this. So when we did this 10 years ago, they were for 50 years. And so we're locked, where we've done this on our installations, we're locked into this. Now, we could probably get out of that, but it would probably cost us a lot of money to do that. So I think we're going to continue along those lines into the future. I'd like to ask you a question back. Do you see an issue with it? Is that why you asked the question?
Sir, part of my concerns is I've noticed, like with some of the contracts, the incentive to live on post, and that's not necessarily there like it used to be with the loss of the BAH and the housing rates now. And what we're starting to see, and I just left Fort Knox as another great example, looking at moving retirees on post as well as GS civilians on post, and some soldiers see that as, well, really, what's the benefit anymore? As far as getting in housing and the quality of life. And I know that affects the high schools, the schools as well, because guys like me are the ones that have children that would fill those high schools. And if I'm looking towards retirement, I'll be going in the hole with the BAH. And so I was just looking to improve to where it used to be, where everybody wanted to live on post and everybody wanted their kids in the DoD schools. And I frankly don't see that anymore.
Yeah, so actually your point's good. So Fort Knox is a very specific problem, because when we did that housing at Fort Knox, we had a brigade that was at Fort Knox. We had some other units there, and so because of the reduction in the size of the Army, we've taken a lot of people off of Fort Knox, which you're very well aware of. And so that's what's caused the problem. As part of this contract, we have to keep the house, I think it's, and actually I'll pass on to Dave, but it's in the 90th percentile of what we have to be able to keep it full. And so if we can't maintain that, you have to then offer it to retirees, GS employees, and then if that doesn't fill, you got to ask civilians to come on. In our major installations like Campbell and Hood and Bragg and Carson and Lewis, we don't foresee that as a problem. But the one thing you are identifying, though, is the fact that we used to identify key and essential personnel had to live on post, and I think that's one way to get at this. But let me turn it over to Dave Halverson and see if he can add anything else to it.
Hey, sir, that's a great question, because it is a dynamic, like you said. One, we've entered into this 50-year, contract with the people, and what we have seen in this dynamic is the intent is that we want to improve quality of life, and we've had a lot of success. Now we're trying to normalize all the services and the differences between all the partners between all of our installations. Like you'll see at Campbell, we could only build a certain amount of new, and then we could then either refurbish some or then tear down other stuff. And they've already tear down like about 100, homes at Campbell, so they could rejuvenate. Those are long-term, improvement plans that we're trying to get to each of the houses on all the installations. So therefore, people get the best, living space for their family. The second thing is we do have this watershed, so therefore we can maintain the fill rates. Like you said, the 90% is about that level. What we want to do is just like you have like at Campbell there, is it's like about 94 percentage of fill rate for them, so they're fairly solvent. What we want to be able to do is minimize that. So we've been working with the senior commanders and everyone to say you need to expand somewhat. You look at what is key and essential people, so we maintain that balance between 30% on post, 70% off post, which is that economic balance. We work with all of our communities and our installations. So that is a very fine line, but it is a very complex thing. So we are committed to ensure that your installations are your Army's homes. We do not sit there for just economic purposes do that. That's why we've not allowed very few. We've had some DA civilians on post and those type of things in the watershed, but it's only like at Knox we're looking, do we do civilians? And no decisions have been made that. That's the lowest level that would actually want to do that, which then would change the dynamic, change the blend of our installations and our garrisons and stuff there. The second thing is to get back on the first sergeant question too. We are turning over the barracks to the first sergeants and stuff. It's at the battalion level now, and we're looking at pushing it down to the company level, because you're exactly right. Non-commissioned officers and leaders need to be in their barracks and working with your chain of command to ensure that we are responsible for their quality of life. Because what we've found out is, just like the chief was talking about, the performance triad, our young soldiers are so wired they're not getting enough sleep, and because they're playing video games, and then they still have to wake up early morning. So we have to put control measures to ensure that we're setting the right conditions for our soldiers to be successful as they grow and learn every day. That's all I have, sir, unless you have any further on.
I would just add to the barracks, it also goes back to the profession, and that there are certain standards that we expect people to sustain, and it's about personal contact and the role of the non-commissioned officer in developing our young men and women, our soldiers. And we think in the barracks we went a little too far, and where there was no unit cohesion, there was it was almost run like a college campus, and the Army's not a college. The Army requires certain standards and discipline, and so we want to ensure that we do that. We'll continue to monitor the housing issue. I still believe we have better quality housing with the privatization initiative. I agree with you, though. I want to avoid moving. I think it should be active duty people who are serving. That's who we want to fill that. That's what that benefit is, and we want to do everything we can to maximize that. The one way to do that is to continue to improve the housing so it becomes actually an incentive and something that somebody wants to live in. And I think that's what we have to continue to work for. Thanks for your question.
All right, Fort Riley.
Good morning, sir. Specialist Rogers, 101 ARB Delta Company. My question is, how are we constructing the Army around the mission or a budget? Because I can't understand how we're going to operate with our plan.
You cut out. Could you ask that one more time?
All right. My question is, sir, how are we constructing the Army around a budget or a mission? Because I can't understand how we can continue to operate with the current and future plan cuts.
Yeah. Okay. So when we look at our budget, there's like a triad that we look at, and it's end strength, modernization, and readiness. And that readiness is equipment readiness, training readiness, family readiness, anything that has to do with making ourselves ready. And so we got to keep that in balance. And your worry is good. I have a worry, because the way the budget has been cut, and it's been done in a very severe way for a few years, we're out of balance. And the only way to get back in balance is to reduce end strength. And you got to reduce end strength to a point where you then can still modernize and have it at the right readiness level. And if we continue down the path that we're going, we're going to be out of balance for about 3 or 4 years, actually until about 2019, where we're not going to have the money to modernize or have sustain the level of readiness that I think is appropriate. So that goes back to the question we had earlier about going back to Congress with the additional missions that's going on, and we have to raise this issue with them and tell them that this is a real problem, and in order for us to maintain the security necessary, you have to revisit this problem. And we're starting to have those discussions now. If we continue down the path, even in 2019, so we'll be a much smaller Army, we'll be ready, we'll be modern, but will we have the capacity to meet all the requirements that we think we're going to have? I am on the record everywhere I go saying this is the most uncertain I've ever seen the national security environment in the 38 years I've been in the Army. And what's the other thing that's different is what I call the velocity of instability is increasing. And really, for the first time, we have to operate on multiple continents at the same time. You know, we have operations going on in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, in the Middle East, all simultaneously. We have soldiers deployed to all of those areas right now. And we can't continue to do that at the level that we think we might have to if it's at the same budget we have now. So, you know, what I'm trying to do is make sure people recognize that so we can have the debate so they can provide us the dollars necessary to sustain the Army that we're going to need in the future. So your question is right on target. We're all very concerned about it. We're doing the best we can. What I got to do is first, the money they give me, I got to make sure we use that money the best way in order to make sure that our soldiers we ask to deploy are ready. The next thing I have to do is fight to make sure we have the right dollars in the future, and we got some work to do in that area. And every day, a day does not go by where I'm not thinking about that, and that I'm not raising that issue, and I'll continue to carry that fight forward for you and your family and all the other soldiers.
All right, Fort Hood.
Good morning, sir. Sergeant Vu with 546 1st Medical Brigade. Pertaining to Army Family Healthcare, my question is, what is the status of the proposed plan for family copay at military treatment facility, and how do you see this impacting Army family?
Okay, General Corral, I'll hand that off to you first, and then I'll follow up with it.
Thank you, sir. It's in the President's budget, but it hasn't been approved. Copays are one method of trying to control costs for DoD. That is a level above medical. Our focus is on the provision of care and the experience of that health care. I probably have to limit my comments to that right now, sir.
Okay, let me take this on. So, bottom line is Congress hasn't approved that yet. So right now there are no copays. We're reviewing that because what I don't like is, first of all, I don't think active duty should have copays. That's my personal opinion. And I've been working very hard to try to get us off of active duty paying copays, because what happens is the way they're doing it is it would depend on which installation you're on, would depend on the copay that you have, and that's not fair. So you shouldn't have a different copay if you're at Fort Hood than if you're at Fort Riley, than if you're at Fort Bragg or Fort Lewis or wherever. And so that's somewhat concerning. So it was in the President's budget. We're working our way through it. We're working it internal to DoD, and Congress has not yet approved it, so we're not there yet. So what I'm trying to do is work through this and come up with a policy where there'll be no copays in active duty, but we're still working our way through it. So it's not done yet. So we're still working our way through it, and we understand the concern over it, and we are trying to eliminate that concern. But there's still lots of work to do yet on that subject. So it's not done yet, so we'll continue to work it. So thanks for that question.
All right, we'll go back to Afghanistan. And Afghanistan, this will be the last question that you have time to ask.
Thank you. This is Specialist Otto. I'm at the 1st Cavalry Division Headquarters. And my question had to do with leadership development, talking about the complex topics of international terrorism, insurgency, and then media on the battlefield. And I've noticed that a lot of the development is focused towards non-commissioned officers and officers. And I was wondering if there were programs or maybe potential programs to develop strategic junior soldiers based on the strategic corporal model, sir.
Well, that's a great question. You're right. We are focused on our non-commissioned officers and officers initially. You know, the environment that we have to operate in today is so much different than when I first came in the Army, and it's so much different than it was just really 10 years ago. And it has to do with how fast information moves and the impact that has on the security environment. And I think in the future, what's going to happen is, you know, we're kind of seeing it play out right now. You're not going to see where we have large deployments, in other words, where we mass 150,000 soldiers and go in somewhere. What you're going to see is we have multiple events going on around the world that require smaller deployments. So what this means is we're going to have more decentralized execution, which means that the decision making is going to be pushed down to the lower level to, you know, company battalion level, company platoon level, in a variety of different ways. So what we have to be able to do is prepare our soldiers for that. So what we're focusing on first is our young officers, lieutenants, captains, our NCOs, sergeants, and up, and we want to make sure that we start to give them the skills. What the plan is, though, is as we develop those skills in them, that then we'll be able to develop programs at the local level, at the unit level, and at the installation level that will help develop our soldiers. And we hope that what happens is you start, my experience in the Army tells me, is what you do is when you get your NCOs and officers trained in this way, they start then to use that, and the culture starts changing, and it starts getting passed on to our young soldiers as soon as they come into the Army, and they start seeing this and experience, so it improves them. To be honest with you, though, what I want is, yes, we have the strategic corporals are important because we give them a lot of responsibility, and we have to start figuring out how we help them. But what we really want is our young soldiers to aspire to be NCOs. And so what we want is we start having you learn at the unit level, at the lower level, and then as you get into your warrior leaders course, you start then to get developed in these techniques. So what I'm telling you is we have a lot of work yet to do just to focus on the non-commissioned officers and officers. But what we hope is going to happen over time is this will translate into soldiers then getting the training that will enable them to operate in this environment. And the other thing we're looking at is as we recruit soldiers, what are the characteristics that we need in the soldiers we're recruiting? And then when we bring them in, we will then in basic training start to develop some of these capabilities that we need. So it'll start earlier on. So you start to see some of this. So what makes me feel so good is that you asked me that question, because you care about this and you understand the importance of it, and that's exactly the mentality that I want, and that's what we want to continue to develop, because it is changing rapidly, and we do need young men and women who are going to think through these problems, and it starts when you're a private, frankly. So we're working it, and it's going to take some time, but I really appreciate the fact that you recognize the importance of this and how we have to push down responsibility lower and lower, and that you're going to be put in situations, whether it be, as we just talked about, in Africa fighting an incredible virus, or in Afghanistan where you are right now, or in Iraq, or in Korea, or name another place that we potentially could go in the future, Eastern Europe, with the Ukraine. We need soldiers who can think and work through these issues. So it is something that we have to develop. And I want the Army to be the premier institution in optimizing soldier performance. And so we're in the process now of developing a program of how we optimize soldier performance. And it's going to be along several different lines. It'll be along the performance triad. It's going to be along develop them physically and mentally to deal with these issues. It's just going to take us a little time to get that going.
All right, Fort Campbell, please go ahead with your last question for today.
My wife, Ashley. Go ahead, Ken. Good morning, sir. PFC Neil from 160th HHC SOAR. Here with my wife, Ashley. My question for you this morning is, in the future, will there ever be an extension or some type of copay or TRICARE for soldiers who have exceptional family member program dependents if they ETS? I understand that retirees get it, but if a soldier ETSs, will there be any type of extension or help for TRICARE?
Yeah, thanks. I think it's difficult to do it for soldiers who ETS. The cost, because we have, so every year, just so you know, 130,000 soldiers leave the Army, both the National Guard, the Reserve, and the active Army. And so say we had to do that, that's over another 1 million people that we would have to provide this benefit to potentially. And so the cost would be so large that frankly we wouldn't be able to afford it. So that's why we haven't, one of the things we do, whether it's right or wrong, I'm being perfectly honest with you here, is we have incentives for those who stay in the Army. And that's one of the incentives to stay in the Army, that you will continue to get lots of different kinds of care for the whole time you're in the Army and then when you retire. And that's part of the sacrifice of staying in for 20 years, for example. Now, we do have other incentives for those who just serve. For example, the education benefit. So even though you might not go all the way to retirement, you can get out and you can use this education benefit, the GI Bill, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we're still trying to reward you for your service, but we can't extend every benefit to those who don't go and serve till retirement. We simply can't afford it. What we can do is try to help you transition in such a way where you can get a job and the benefits necessary to continue whatever care you need for your family, if it includes EFMP.
And Fort Riley, we'll go ahead and get the last question from you today, and then we'll close it out.
Sir, my name is Sergeant First Class Strickland with Delta Company 111 Combat Aviation Brigade. My question for you today is, with the drawdown going on and thousands of soldiers returning to civilian life, the critical skills that they bring to the local communities. The Soldier Life program is designed to help with that, but how is the Soldier Life program just, or more than just a name for the organization?
Yeah. So there's a couple things. So great question, and it's one that so I changed the name for a reason. 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago now, I changed it to Soldier for Life, and it's taken about a year now, a year and a half or so for it to take hold. It's because it's a thought process that we as an Army, from the time somebody enlists in the Army and when they serve honorably, it's our responsibility to let them transition, help them to find a job, because they are a soldier for life. They will always be considered a soldier. The one way we can help is through having them transition. So what are we doing? So a couple of things is we have reached out to regional communities throughout the United States and encouraging them to hire veterans and the characteristics that veterans have that they should be willing to hire. And so through that program, hundreds of thousands now have now gotten jobs. Now that's not enough. We need more than that. And jobs that are good jobs with good companies who have good benefits. The other thing that we're working is we continue to work as soldiers transition. We've had some pilots. We had one at Fort Lewis, for example, welding was one, where the last 4 weeks they were on active duty, they started training. In the first 4 weeks, they finished their training, and they were then a member of the union, and they were guaranteed a job, a very well-paying job. We're also working at qualifications. Each state has individual qualifications. But we are changing how we qualify soldiers in the Army, whether it be for a truck driver, a medic, whatever it might be, that when they decide to transition, it eases their transition and it's much easier for them to qualify in each state to get a job. So that's the kind of thing that the Soldier for Life program is doing. And we are doing that in such a way that will increase the capabilities of our soldiers then continuing to contribute to society and really look back on their time in the Army as one that was very positive. Let me turn it over, Dave. I know there's installational issues that we're working on this. Do you want to add to that?
Hey, sir, this is a very exciting approach that we have taken, and just like you said, we have attacked it from not only the community aspect of it, but also internally. So, like you were saying, how our MOS schools now credential and assist that for their MOSs, and then how we, stay in accordance with the VOW Act, go left to bang. So now that 365 days prior, we are working with them to be able to allow their transitions. We've had a lot of success, just like you said, at Joint Base Lewis McChord, and then at Fort Hood, they're starting a mechanics course with a partnership with GM and stuff like that. So these are the types of forums, and we're bringing them to each one of them. So we've done things, not a job fair, it's a hiring fair. And the community support that we've been able to get now has been huge. So each of our garrisons working with the senior commanders will have this opportunities where a lot of people are coming in and they're looking at, because they want our soldiers because they're values-based. They want our soldiers because they're disciplined and they'll be a hard working. What we have to give them is the credentialing and the skill sets to transition what they've been doing while their time in service, and then apply that into a true skill sets. So we will continue to nurture. We have within Installation Management Command have stood up a Soldier for Life Fusion Center there that synchronizes a lot of this for all the outside agencies. We just had a great run at Fort Bragg where they just had a huge thing. So each of the posts, we were bringing in a lot of different capabilities, and to assist our soldiers. Our intent is every soldier that does transition out of the Army, like the Chief says, will have a job and they'll have some continuity. We'll assist them it used to be ACAP, now it's your Soldier for Life transition, program. All these types of things will assist them to be able to do it. And then the biggest thing we want our soldiers to do is you got to work at this. It takes time, just like you learned your warfighting skill set to be able to be qualified also as you transition. You have to learn how to talk differently. You can't speak in acronyms. You have to really work that. So that's what we're trying to do, is reshape your resumes, facilitate not only the great corporate support we got, but all community support, because the people really want to do it. So our soldiers then transition to the greatness that they deserve. That's it, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. The other thing I would add is we're also helping those who want to continue their education, because we have found there are soldiers who were taken advantage of with their GI Bill. With some universities, we're developing partnerships and helping them to also transition if they want to go get a degree and make sure they do that right. So it's all of these kind of things, and it's really important to us. So thanks for the question.
So that's actually all the time that we have questions. Did you want to answer one more, sir? Okay. Fort Hood, go ahead with your last question.
Good morning, sir. It really is an honor and a privilege to be here with you today. My name is Stephanie Cross, and I'm an Army spouse. My question today is, how effective are the Army's efforts to change the stigma on behavioral health, such as PTSD?
Yeah. So that's a terrific question. I got to tell you, every day I wake up and I worry about this. We are trying hard to get the proper statistics out there that really says the large majority of our soldiers have done very well, and that PTSD is curable, and that PTSD has several different levels to it, and that soldiers who have PTSD can continue to contribute to society, can continue to do things that can be normal, and they can do anything that you want them to do, and they deserve that attention because of their sacrifice. It is difficult, though, because there are good-intentioned people who are bringing attention to PTSD, but they always do it with very dramatic stories. And so one of the more difficult things for us is that some people think that every soldier is incredibly violent and has all kinds of issues because they've served in Iraq or Afghanistan. And so we have to constantly work at that. So what we are doing is we are reaching out to many different organizations to help us with this. We are trying to do a public affairs campaign that properly identifies this problem, because The problem we have is it's a fine line. We want people to understand that there are young soldiers and old soldiers who have PTSD, but that they are treatments, and we need them to be treated, they need to get the proper care, and they can contribute normally to society over time. Are there more serious cases? Yes, and those take extensive care. But that it is curable, and that people should not be afraid of it. It is something that we need to get help with. And so what I worry about sometimes is that they take extreme cases, and people then translate that every case is an extreme case. So we have to balance all of that, because the main thing we are interested in is take care of our soldiers and our family members who have these issues and try to help them so they can continue to live great lives and normal lives and get them the care and help that they need. So you got to balance that without putting out this stigma that's out there, that also, not only the stigma on the individual, but the stigma on anybody who served. And that's something that we work very hard at. So thank you for that great question. Is there anything else? And you want to follow up on that, or did I answer your question?
No, sir, just to thank you for your service, and I know you're a great advocate for our soldiers and our families, and we're proud to have you.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, this was terrific, actually. I enjoyed it very much, and your questions were incredibly good. I'm not surprised by that. They were thoughtful, they're meaningful, all the issues that we work every single day. So that you're definitely in touch with the issues that we have and the problems we have. But here, let me just say, the amazing thing to me, I get a chance to go around the whole Army. I get a chance to visit everywhere. Linda and I go together everywhere, and we're amazed by the soldiers and families and what they do every day and their resilience and what we continue to do around the world to bring stability. I've never been more proud of being in the Army than today. We have great soldiers, we have great families, and they continue to do incredible work every day, and I'm very proud of that. We have issues we have to work through. We have to make sure that we sustain this great Army that we have. I want to let you know that I'm doing everything that I can to stay focused on that. Because as I say, the strength of our nation is our soldiers. The strength of our soldiers is our families. And really, that's what makes us, Army strong. And I really believe that. And that's what we can't ever forget. So thanks for everything you do.
Just wanted to say thank you, and it was great to spend the morning with you, and we look forward to seeing you when we come and visit the different installations.
And I want to thank Dave Halverson and Karen Halverson and Joe and Dr. Carollo for participating as well. Thank you. It's been a great day. I really appreciate it, and we're going to do more of these. So thank you very much.